What did John do to deserve this contempt from his brother Garvey? This question matters, as the answer depends on whether we're discussing the original game or the remaster. To find this out, we first need to get all the tapes we're missing, so let's go back to the nights. It's precisely on night 6 where we're introduced to the boa, and there's not much to highlight, since both have the same mechanics. If he shows up on the right side, just go to the other end of the office and stare at him until he leaves. Although something curious that happened to me is that he glitched when he got together with Dan Breaker, so yeah, not everything can be perfect here. Also, it's worth noting that in the original game, Molten Evil appears on this night. However, in the remastered version, we have to wait until the next night. To be honest, Molten Evil hasn't really changed much either. It's the same mechanic in both versions, we just have to look at the ceiling to avoid him. Very simple but annoying at times. Let's move on to the next night. Unlike the original, this remastered version adds a new animatronic, Spring Leech. This one has a very original mechanic, since at a random moment a series of numbers will appear on the screen. We have to select the cameras with their respective numbers in that same order. It's not very hard to avoid, but it's also one of those animatronics that were discarded at first, but now, in this remastered version, make an appearance. Now, on night 9 I just have to say that it's one of the really tough nights, but it won't compare to one of the nights that comes later. It's important to note that throughout all the nights we've experienced so far, we've collected each tape. These are crucial for understanding the story, and to unlock the true or good ending. That being said, let's go to night 10. Here we always get the bad ending in both the original and remastered versions. In both, we play as John Wright, his younger brother. But the way he behaves towards us changes a lot. On one hand, in the original, we have a psychopath who just wants to kill us to come back to life.
When I take you to your heart, I'll use it to watch it.
We'll both come back and we'll finish what I started!
In the remaster, the psychopath displays much more empathy for his younger brother. I found you. However, because John knows the things that Garvey did, he won't let him into his soul so easily. And in fact, there's something very curious that Garvey mentions here. As we know, John tries to prevent Garvey from coming in that night. However, in both versions we can see how Garvey can easily enter the office without any problem. Even if we're a bit slow, he can even attack us. But what Garvey says in the remastered version is that he doesn't want to enter the office, but rather possess John's soul.
You have to. Subtitled by Jane Coyle.
You have to subtitled.
You need to let me into your heart, into your mind, into your...
Subtitled Jane Coyle, subtitled by Jane Coyle. Bueno, lo tomará por las malas. I guess something similar happens in the original, however here you can't really understand why he insists so much on getting in when he can't do it that easily. Now on the technical side, in the remastered version you can keep a vent selected, so if Garvey goes through, he'll be slowed and you just need to avoid him. However, in the original, even if we have the vent set, if Garvey goes through there, he automatically goes and deactivates it, so you could say it's a bit harder here. If we focus on the animations, in the remastered version we have more of them. We can see how Garvey leaves the place where we find him, whether he comes from the sides, the ceiling, or the vents. On the other hand, in the original, there are only animations when we see him through the vents. From the other sides, there's only a black screen transition, nothing else. Then pretty much everything else remains intact. Although something to point out is that in the remastered version, darkness is overused. This prevents us from seeing certain details. Once we manage to finish the night, our efforts will apparently have been in vain, because Garvey manages to get in through the window. John tries to escape, but he simply can't, and Garvey catches him, which leads us to the end, the bad ending. But that's not all. We still have the nightmare night and some secrets left to discover. Night 11, that is, the Nightmare Night, lives up to its name, because it's torture to be there. Seriously, I'm telling you, I reached my limit. Nothing that can't be solved with hours of practice, but unless I want to delay this video even more, it's better if I skip this night and a few other things. Even so, from what I've seen in other gameplays, in the remastered version Garvey doesn't appear, which I find strange, because in the original version, he shows up around 5 Anti-Meridian becoming much more aggressive than before. But his dialogues also make it clear that he will spend the rest of his days in eternal hell.
Thank you for watching the
This isn't in the remastered version. Honestly, it's a shame. Even so, in both versions, Puppet's soul tells us that we've come a long way, but we still have a long way to go. But in the original, he mentions some keys which we can get on nights 10 and 11. On the other hand, in the remastered version, he mentions the tapes and the theater. We're going to see that next. Which we're about to see.
Que se desbloquea los trucos, los retos y el contenido sin usar. Curiosamente, dentro del contenido sin usar es que se encuentran todos
animatronics we've seen in the remastered version: Spring Bleach, Dawnbreaker, and Havoc Balloon Boy. That being said, we can continue. To unlock the theater in both versions, complete the night in Amar, collect and listen to all the tapes, then we can enter. Now, let's not kid ourselves, it's more than clear that the story has changed drastically, something we'll see in this theater and in the tapes, and also in the later newspapers. That's why we won't talk about it yet, because to understand the story we need all the pieces. To complete the theater in both cases, we just need to follow certain specific steps, only then will Night 12 be unlocked for us. The difference, aside from the story being told, is that in the original, we need 2 keys. In the remastered version, these don't exist. Once that's done, all that's left is to interact with Amy Real. In the original video game, we have to go into extras, characters, and select Amy Real to press her nose while we watch it deform. After enough time has passed, she will appear in her caper version, where after her jump scare, we will finally have access to Night 12. Because yes, in the theater we had unlocked Night 12, but we couldn't access it. On the remastered video game side, here we have to type Amy Real in the menu, and that way we'll access the same minigame as in the original. Now we must also type the numbers shown on screen. After that, we gain access. We're already on Night 12 and everything changes drastically. We're no longer in Purgatory, now we're in the old Cake Bear location. In both versions, we'll have to avoid both Havoc Puppet and Amy Real by using the cameras, since that's all we have to stop them. A tough night any way you see it, but once we finish, everything will come together. At the end, we'll get access to a box. A box that contains newspapers about various important events related to the Cake Bear and Freddy Fazbear restaurants. To keep it brief, and because there are variations depending on the version, I'll try to only explain the most important points of each story. In the original version, we're told that Gabriel Wright had an accident along with his brother John Wright, in which Plasma 2 was spilled, but more on Garvey, since he almost died but was saved. However, his skin turned purple, and because of that, he was bullied and mocked by John's friends. That's how his path of revenge began. He kills the child and puts him in the trash outside Cake Bear's place, which causes it to be shut down. At Freddy Fazbear's family diner, he kills a teenage girl in the parts and service room. He also pays a child to put his brother inside Freddy Fazbear's mouth, causing the bite of 83 and also leading to the closure of Freddy Fazbear's family diner. Now in the new Freddy Fazbear's pizzeria, he lures 5 children to kill them. When the security guard starts to get suspicious, he meets the same fate, being placed inside the Cake Bear animatronic. And to finish his murders, he also causes the death of his own brother Peter Wright, since he had strong suspicions about Garvey. Because of all this, the police start to go after Garvey, but he is not found. Those who have seen the story of FNAF 3 will understand. Garvey is cornered by the souls and killed inside the Spring Bonnie suit. Many years later, Fazbear Frights opens. Springtrap escapes, but John finds him. Recognizing his brother, he sets the place on fire. When John wakes up, he is no longer in the real world, but inside Purgatory, triggering the events we have already seen. Very disturbing and all, but within the remastered story, things change. Garvey is a boy who was adopted by the Wright family. Previously, there was an accident where Alex Wright's wife was found dead in a dumpster outside Cake Bear. That's why the place closed down. Even so, Fredbear's family diner opens its doors, where Garvey, on one of those days, his younger brother John, is taken by some kids to Fredbear's mouth as a prank. However, the prank ended in tragedy as the animatronic's mouth closed and John was taken to the hospital. Here, Garvey wants to take revenge and ends the lives of the 3 kids. Then he kills a girl, a boy, and 3 kids with the help of the springlock suit and later the security guard because he found out about the murders and locked him inside Cake Bear. Then he lured 2 kids and left them starving to death inside a room. Finally, he ends his brother's life, since Garvey thinks he is an obstacle to shutting down Freddy Fazbear once and for all. In addition to his brother, there's one more murder, as there's an extra body found inside the Golden Freddy suit. After that, the police find all the bodies, which puts Garvey in serious danger. In his last tape, Garvey admits to having hurt several people and that he used John's accident as an excuse to cause even more harm. Finally, he tells his brother that if he finds him, he should stop him. John is the one who must put an end to it. After recording the last tape, Garvey visits Freddy Fazbear's, meets the children's souls, and is trapped in Spring Bonnie, where he dies. Not quite, because many years later, Fazbear Frights opens, and John meets his brother Garvey, which leads John to start a fire, causing both of them to die and unleashing all the knights of Dormitabis' purgatory. As we can see, the story has taken a new turn, leaving it to each person to choose their preferred version. Regarding the antagonist, we have Garvey Wright, who wants to shut down locales y matar a personas por simple room. The latter is due to an accident caused by his younger brother John, which left scars on his skin and only led to mockery and a lot of bullying. Conversely, Garvey Wright prioritizes John above all else. When he almost dies, it's Garvey who takes revenge into his own hands, but he doesn't know when to stop because to some extent he enjoys having committed each of his murders and he feels bad about it. In both stories, Garvey ends up taking the life of Peter Wright, his brother, and in both versions, Garvey ends up burning in Fazbear Frights. Then he appears in Night 10. Garvey needs to use John to get out of there. However, we managed to survive not only Night 10 but also 11 and even 12. In the end, he's not only found in simple newspapers, but also in a scene that shows us everything is over. John managed to save the souls of all the victims. The only soul he couldn't save was his brother Garvey, who will spend all eternity here in Dormitabis, paying for his actions for the rest of his days. Definitely, Dormitabis has become one of my favorite SNAP fangames. Although the remastered version hasn't been very faithful to the story, everything else has fulfilled its purpose very well. It has that distinct Dormitabis trait, for better or worse. As I said, the only thing you could disagree with is the story, and maybe adding a few more characters who aren't implemented badly at all, although they do interrupt the story a bit. Normally the video would end here, but there are a few minor things left to mention. Since there won't be a third part, I'll cover them now. The first is Freddy in the Space. Unlocked on night 11, in the original, completing it shows a series of words, most notably cold, cool, and hot. Basically, the environment goes from being cold to very hot, emphasizing the Fazbear Frights fire. What's interesting is that at the end, Michael's name is shown, along with this image. In the remastered version, after finishing the minigame, you see a teaser for an upcoming fangame. Besides that, throughout the nights we can find hidden animatronics in the remastered version, such as Spring Bonnie, Fredbear, Havoc Mangle, Peter, and Havoc Toy Bonnie. In the original, we can also mention a kind of dead Golden Freddy, who sometimes appears on the table. And if we want to make a comparison in Junk's Curse, the truth is that both versions are very similar, although in the original, whenever we're about to lose, this characteristic little music plays and the screen goes black. So you won't see any surprises from Junk's Curse here, but in terms of animations and designs, both are very similar. And with all that said, I just want to thank you for staying until the end and for waiting for this second part. I don't have much to say, so take care of Dormitabis if you can manage it, and hopefully I'll see you in a future video. Bye!